too strenuous on a Sunday night. Cool. So first thing we're going to do is start lying down, and you're going to bring one hand to your belly, one hand to your upper chest, and you've got your knees bent and your feet to the ground. Good, and we're just going to start to tune in to our breath. So just one hand easily on the upper chest, the other hand, fingertips to the belly. We're tuning into your breath as much as you can, breathing in and out through your nose. And what I want you to think about as we breathe is breathing into both hands. So you're not just breathing into the upper chest, you're also breathing into the belly. So that means we're using the diaphragm, which is the muscle at the base of your lungs, and we're using that to help you get nice, full breaths. And by doing this deep breathing, this diaphragmatic breathing, it means you're going into your parasympathetic nervous system. You're not in that fight or flight response. Good, and then we'll turn our heads to the left and allow the knees to rock down to the right. So knees bent, feet to the ground, knees rock over to the right. And then on your next inhale, knees and head through center. Knees rock over to the left and turn the head away from the knees. So it's just a nice gentle twist to begin. Inhale through center, over to the first side. Inhale through center, over to the second side. So you're just moving the body with the breath. Inhale back through center. And then give the knees a gentle hug into the chest. So one hand to each knee, drawing the knees in. Thinking about the lower back gently pressing to the ground as we draw the knees in. Good, we'll take a little rock from side to side. And then rock back and forth. And coming up to sitting. You can sit either crossed legs or however you feel comfortable. If you've got any restrictions, you can always have your legs out or come up to a cushion. And we're just going to tune back into your breath seated. So one hand on your upper chest, one hand on your belly. And thinking about breathing into both hands. So you're expanding into the hands on the inhale. On the exhale, drawing everything back towards the midline. And you can even feel the ribs draw in as you exhale. So inhale to expand, exhale for everything to come back towards the midline. And the reason the breath is so important is because you're getting out of that fight or flight response. If you were only to breathe up high, that breeds almost this anxiety, this high response. Whereas we want to bring the breath lower, so we're more in the parasympathetic nervous system. I've just been doing some camps with Alex Gregory, who's won 2 gold medals at the Olympics. And an amazing part of his story is before he did that, he had troubles where basically he'd end up having a panic attack in the race. And that was exactly what was happening. He was breathing only with the upper chest and not breathing fully with the whole of his lungs. So he wasn't using his diaphragm to breathe, and he had to relearn how to breathe in order to be able to perform. But before 2008, he had all these major races where he'd almost get into a panic attack and at some point almost even fall in the water or different things. He was getting in lots of trouble, and breath work really helped him out with that. So that's why it's so important to learn to breathe fully with all of our lungs. Good. Next thing we're going to think about is we're going to look at loosening out the neck. So we're going to bring our fingertips either side and then bend a little into the elbows. Good. Bring one ear towards a shoulder. It doesn't matter which way you go for now. And then you're pressing the fingertips of the other hand away from you. So you're just creating length through the side of the head. Whichever way you're leaning, you can pick up that hand, draw the neck up and out. So you're not dragging it down, you're thinking about moving up and out with the hand, just gently helping the stretch. Good, and then we can turn to look down, tuck the chin, stretch a little more at the back of the neck, and then turn up slightly if that feels okay. Good, slow to release down. We'll swap over to the other side. Same again, push the fingertips away into the ground as you lean. Again, hand can come to the head. Think about drawing up and out, so it's almost making the head lighter. Again, we'll tuck the chin down. And then turn the head up. And then slowly back through center. Good. Next, we're going to look at the spine and we're going to think about the ways that you can move your spine. So this is particularly if you've got any back pain or just be able to maintain a healthy spine. So when we look at the way that the spine can move, one is lateral flexion. So for that, we'll keep one hand down, reach up and over. So with all of these movements, you can do it on all fours, you can do it in a lunge, you can do it standing, or you can do it seated as we are now. There's lots of ways to do it. But what you want to think every time, almost every day if you can, try and move the body, move the spine in those 6 ways of movement. So it's lateral flexion, or you can think side to side. And the next one is rotation. So we're bringing one hand across to the opposite knee. We're using that knee as an anchor to help rotate the body round. Think about lifting up into the chest, sitting up nice and tall. On your next inhale, back through center. Exhale over to the other side. So we've got lateral flexion, we've got that rotation, and then we've got flexion and extension. So for that, we'll come to all fours and we'll do your cat-cows. So this is one probably lots of you know. We bring the hands down. As we inhale, we think about the belly coming down, lifting the chest and the chin, rolling the shoulders. But I still want you to think about the ribs drawing in. So we're not just sinking down. We're still strong in the front of the body as we lift the chest and the chin. On your next exhale, push the ground away, round the upper back. Good. Inhale, belly down. Exhale, push the ground away. And then back to center with the body. So those are the 6 ways of moving the spine. Side to side, rotating, and then flexion and extension. So it's just a really good marker to think, am I keeping my spine healthy? Am I moving it in all those planes of movement? But then the other thing that we can think of to keep our bodies healthy is moving in non-linear ways. And this is something with rowers and with coxes. I think you see so often there are very linear movements that we make, but we want the body to be prepared for non-linear movements. So linear movements are things very straightforward, up and down. So for example, a squat, but it might be that you add in side lunges, diagonal lunges, all different things to keep that strength and that range of motion in different ways. One thing we're going to do to explore, we'll come back to all fours. And I just want you to move the head around freely, but move it really slowly. So you've got some control of the movement, but still nice and fluid. Just allowing the neck to move freely. Maybe if there's a tight bit, you pause there and then move on again. So you're just learning about where your body feels tight, where it feels loose. Good. We'll bring that movement into the shoulders. Maybe you sway side to side. If it feels good, you bend into the elbows. Just allowing those shoulders to move around. And then we'll bring the movement into the hips again. Maybe the hips come side to side. Maybe they circle around. Then take a moment to bring that movement into the whole of the body. So moving back and forth, circling, doing whatever feels good in your body. Good. And sometimes it's good to just check in with your body. Move in a way that feels intuitive. Not necessarily what you think you should be doing, but rather going with the feeling. Sometimes that just brings something up. You notice a little bit of tightness somewhere. Maybe you even hold into that tightness before you move again. Good. And then we'll release back. Good. Next thing we're going to talk about, and I think it's so important for so many of our modern lives, but even more so for Coxes, is the upper cross syndrome, it's quite often called, where we do so much in our lives when our shoulders are rounded forward and we've got this tightness across the front of the body, and then the back is actually kind of lengthened, and we need to both strengthen the back of the body but also stretch the front of the body. So if you think of the everyday movements that we make that are like that, so driving your car, on your laptop, on your phone, there's so much forward folding, forward bending movement. And coxing, whether it's in the bow loader or the coxing an 8 or 4 stern loader, again, you're adding to this movement. So depending on your height and depending on the setup, you might be hunched forward, braced, holding onto the boat. And again, you're adding to that movement. So it's really about strengthening the back of the body and loosening out the front of the body. So a really great thing to strengthen the back of the body. Things like back bends are really great. And then also strengthening on the shoulders. So we'll come forward onto your belly. Hands can just float beneath the shoulders. And as we inhale, see if you can lift your shoulders and you're squeezing the elbows back. Sorry, I've got a black top on. It might not be the clearest. So squeezing the elbows back as you lift the upper body. And then exhale, release down. Inhale, squeeze the elbows back. Lift the front of the body. Exhale, release down. So those are really good exercises. Anything with back extension, whether you're doing just the upper body, whether you're using the leg, any extension exercises, strengthening the back line of the body, really, really useful. You can also rest in these positions. So maybe you come onto the elbows. This is a Sphinx pose. If you're studying or if you're reading, it's a really good resting position. Even if you're watching telly or something, just think about how you're doing, how you're moving in your downtime, and could you be in more varied positions? So be in some positions that are extension and not just continual flexion or forward folding. Good, and then if you want to go further, you can bring the hands back, go into your cobra, just peeling back as far as you want. Or those of you that know a bit more yoga or want to try a bit more, hands go back even further, press through the top of the feet, and you can try lifting the hips, lifting the knees into your up dog. So there's all different progressions. Another really useful one for this is to reach the arms forward and try and lift the hands off, and then elbows come wide, and different variations, just where you're strengthening that center line of your back. It's really going to help with that. Good, slow to lift back up. So you've got that active strengthening. You've also got the passive opening. Another really nice passive opening thing to do. I don't have a cushion to, oh, I do have, here we go. You could have a blanket or a cushion. And you don't have to do this now, but it's just to give you an idea. But you can roll something up. If you've got a bolster or you've got some bigger cushions, then that's great. But you can fold or roll a cushion up. Maybe rest back, elbows wide, and just allow the chest to open. I'd actually bring it a little bit higher so that the hips are down, your chest can be open. And just allow the chest to really gently open, feel the shoulders come down to the ground. And it's almost a relief sometimes when you do lots of these forward folding activities. You might find to start with you want something small beneath you, but over time you could build up to even more cushions and get even more of an opening in that way. Good. And then we're just going to go through a few different movements. I'm not going to spend too long on these movements, but we're going to go through a few so that you can have some ideas of, we were asked about warm up and cool down for whether you're an athlete or if you're copsing the athletes. So let's come forward to a lunge. So this is just to give you some ideas. So you're coming forward to a lunge, ankle beneath the knee, back knee is slightly back of the hips. If you were doing something for a warm-up, the idea is to raise your heart rate, increase your mobility, to get you ready to race. So you'd want to do something that's mobilizing. So for example, if you're in a lunge, you might do twists one way or both ways. You might do lifting and lowering into the lunge, something where there's some active movement involved. After you race or after you train, then that's where you do longer holds. So you might come forward and hold your lunge. Or same thing if we were back into a hamstring stretch. If it was before the race, you might go forward and back into it. You might open and close the body, something like that. Whereas after the race, you'd want to hold still in the stretch, and whether that's after you've trained or whether that's later in the evening. But you really want to be doing these mobility movements before you train and then more static movements after, because we want to make sure that we're having strength throughout the range of movement before you go training. Whereas then in the evening or later on, you can work on your general flexibility and you can be a little bit more passive in the stretching. Good, and I think we will leave the movement there and we will go on to some questions. I did have lots more planned, so it'd be great to do it. Maybe we'll do a part 2 another time. But we had quite a lot of questions on the forms, and also if anyone here has questions. Matilda, do we want to go through the questions we had already, or should we open it up? Yeah. Or even if you sent it in and you want to re-ask it. How often should you do these stretches? So I like to think always like be more dog or be more cat. Like when you look at dogs and cats, every time they get up, they just do like a little bit of a stretch. And I really think if you can build some of these into your day and habit stack certain stretches, like that's for me like the absolute best. Like, of course, it would be great. I always say to rowers, 3 times a week for 15 to 20 minutes. Brilliant. That's really, really good. If you do have the chance to have a longer class, then that's great. But as much as you can, if you can build the habits into what you're doing. So ideally, it should be daily, but it might be that one day it's just a lying twist before bed. Another time you might have a bit more time and be able to pop on a YouTube, or I've got a platform, Yoga for Rowers, which I can give you guys a code at the end. So it might be that you follow something more structured on other days, but really as much as you can, really try and build it into the routine. And I'd say similar for the rowers. Of course, it's great if you've got a mobility warm-up or you've got a stretch that you do after, but we all know it's never perfect. It's never always that we've got the time to do that. So it's really fitting it in when you can. And it might be that you come off the water and you're cold and wet and, not necessarily the place to do stretches. So then you do it later in the evening at home. But definitely like be more dog and just think, okay, when I get up, maybe I wake up in the morning and I move my spine 6 ways, and it literally takes 30 seconds or a minute, but you've just mobilized your spine. And if you can build those habits into your day, that will be optimum. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. That one just popped up. I didn't check. Oh, yeah, perfect. Yeah. 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 I think the main thing is if you're in pain and it's consistent and continual, you need to go and see a physio. You need to take it as seriously as the rowers do, and take it as seriously, because that can affect your whole life. Almost always what I see with back pain or even back discomfort is it's so often factorial. So it's not necessarily just one thing that people do. It could be sleep, stress, lifestyle, breathing. Like it could be so many different things that are affecting it. But if we're talking about like back discomfort, because obviously coxing, whether you're in the bow or the stern loader, it can, again, you're in a lot of flexion a lot of the time. When you think of the spine, I always say, imagine when you're a baby, or imagine when you're a fetus. When you're a fetus, you're completely in spinal flexion. You're all the way forward, upper and lower body, you're tucked up. First thing babies do, they're born, they lift their heads. Yeah. Or maybe they take a while to lift their heads, but the first thing So you've got extension in the upper spine, in your cervical spine. And then there for a while, they just lift their heads, then they're crawling along. And then it's when you come up to standing that's where your extension in the lower spine happens. So your lower spine, your lumbar spine, which is where a lot of people get pain from, that's naturally slightly more in extension. So if you're spending a lot of time in flexion, so with the lower spine the other way around, then that's where a lot of issues will come from. So it's the strengthening, of course, it's the hip mobility. So it's making sure that your hips are strong enough and have enough mobility that you can hinge from the hips. So same as the rowers, you want to be able to hinge at the hips and not be using your lower spine. Sorry, I'm not wearing the best top to see that. I'll pull this up. So it's like you're hinging at the hips, you're not using the lower back to hinge. It's actually from the hips that you're hinging. And even when you're sat in a Cox's seat, if you can hinge at the hips rather than be into your lower back, you don't want the lower back to be continuously in flexion for a long time. So that's really important, something to think about developing and working on if you have lower back pain. And then in terms of management, things that people can find useful, and it depends, it does depend on where the pain is, but in general it comes from that flexion of the lower back. So things like a lying twist can be really, really useful, especially before bed, working on twisting. Generally, twists tend to be quite safe and restorative, so really working on twisting and rotating the spine. And then also things like working on the hamstrings and doing nerve flossing. Again, so long as there's no severe pain when you do this, but you might hold the hamstring and then point and flex. And then hold, pushing up through the heel. So those are a couple of things, lying twist and that flexion and extension on the hamstring stretches that can help with that. And then when we're going to go upper back as well. Yeah, upper crust syndrome. Yeah, 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 yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and just to make it really clear to people, because we went through it in the movement part, and then Erin highlighted it as well. So anterior chain is all the front of the body. So if you were going to like close down the anterior chain, this is going forward like this. Anterior chain is shortening. Posterior chain is all up the legs, over the back. And this is what we're talking about. We spend a lot of time with the posterior chain lengthened and the anterior chain shortened. So this is where we want to work on the movements that are going to lengthen the anterior chain, so lengthen the front of the body and strengthen the back of the body. So it's working on things that are going to strengthen all the way up, so your glutes, all the muscles in the back, and lengthen the front of the body. I did see another question pop up. I feel like that. So, mm, yeah, open up. I've definitely sat in a cox's seat and rotated as well. So held the opposite side of the boat just to help me. Sometimes there's a up the boat, up the spine. Yeah, so a bit of rotation as well. But yeah, again, thinking about, okay, I'm spending a lot of time in flexion, just ease off, you know, exactly what Matilda said. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So going back to the basic principle, six-way movements of the spine. Brilliant, thank you. Fab. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love this question. So I studied psychology for my undergraduate, so I'm like all over this question as well. Um, and I'd say like one massive thing that I think isn't talked about enough, like it's definitely talked about a lot more now than it used to be, but it still isn't talked about enough. So your body, the way it responds, your body's reaction is exactly the same, like literally exactly the same, whether you're nervous or excited. It's your perception that decides that for you. So you have the same body reaction, your heart rate goes up, you might be sweaty, whether you're nervous about something and whether you're excited. And sometimes just by taking that step back and realizing, okay, I could tell myself that I'm excited and I'm ready to race, and have that reassurance in yourself and see that body reaction as something positive, then that's going to make all the difference. So you just sometimes think nervous or excited. Okay, actually, I'm excited, I'm ready to race. Of course, inherently, you know that some of it's nervousness, but just the way that you perceive it is going to make all the difference. And then how your body then responds to it, like, is based on those thoughts. It's actually really, really amazing in terms of like with cardiac disease, it's as to how you respond to stress or how you perceive the stress as to whether it's good, because it's good to have good stress, and your blood vessels will dilate if you perceive it as good stress. If you perceive it as bad stress, everything constricts a lot more. So definitely like positive thinking, affirmations. So, and when I say affirmations, it doesn't have to be like super woo-woo. It's like telling yourself, okay, this is good energy. This is good. I'm prepared to race. I can feel that my body's prepared. I'm excited to race. I'm ready to, execute the best race plan, be part of the boat, like everything that I need to do, my body is ready for it. So really positive thinking about your body's response to racing. But other really useful things that I found are quite often when you go into fight or flight response, it's almost like the corners of your perception come in. So one really useful exercise that I've found is if you bring your thumbs in front of you and you look at your thumbs, and you're going to stay looking forward, you're looking at your thumbs, and you might do this for about a minute or so. And then you're going to stay looking forward with your eyes, but you're going to bring your thumbs out wide. And you're going to see, can you see in your peripherals, your thumbs? And you pause at the point you can see them. And you might be able to do this a few times and widen those peripherals. So by widening our peripherals, we're just calming the body down. We're using all of our vision. We're getting really prepared so that you're not in this kind of tunnel vision. You're just calming the body down and being more prepared. So that's a really useful little technique. And then the other one that I use all the time, and this is really good the night before racing, it could be that you do it a few times a day even, is box breathing. So box breathing is a technique that has also been used by the Navy SEALs, and they use it in decision making. It is a traditional yoga technique, but it's something that's been adopted by quite a lot of high stress people that are in high stress situations, like that Navy SEALs might be in, where they have to make a really important decision. So for box breathing, you're just thinking about breathing in a box shape. So we'll breathe in, hold the breath at the top of the breath, breathe out, hold the breath at the bottom of the breath. Breathe in, hold the breath at the top, breathe out, hold the breath at the bottom. And you can continue making that box shape for as long as you like. It could be 30 seconds, it could be a few minutes, but it's just controlling the breath, bringing you back into your parasympathetic nervous system, into being able to make a decision or being able to be in control quite nice and quickly. And the more you do it, the more benefit to your body that has. So that's a really great technique. And then I had one other thing that I was going to talk about with that. I think another thing is, and I'm sure you talk about this a lot already, Matilda, but it's like really being prepared for whatever scenario might happen, and however you and your crew prepare for that, whether you do visualizations, whether you talk it through, whether you know what's going to happen. And one of my friends who's in the men's eight in the GB men's eight that won the Olympics in the summer, one of the things he talks about is like do you know the saber-toothed tiger theory? So it's like, so of course we want like to be warmed up and be prepared, but we all know different things can happen come race day. Like, I think on that day they had the singles had to be postponed, and then all the races were postponed, and it was all a bit crazy. So often things don't go to plan, and I'm sure we've all been in head races or regatta races where it's like it's delayed, or you have to suddenly start early, or something's happened, or you've got equipment failure and you don't get to warm up. And the saber-toothed tiger theory is that back in the day, when you needed to get away from a saber-toothed tiger, I know this isn't necessarily correct, but like your body just makes you, if you need to get away and your body needs to perform, it just does it. So of course we want to be as prepared as we can be, but also having that confidence in yourself as the cops and in the crew, that if it doesn't all go to plan, you can do it, because innately we've got that capability within us. We've got that capability of jumping on an erg and doing a 2K, because if it was a life or death situation, you'd make it happen. So also just having that confidence in your human ability. And I thought that was a really cool way to think of it. Yeah. However, I can race without the most perfect warm-up. Yeah, yeah. 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 Yeah, this is a nice one. Or another good one is anything where it's bilateral. So like bilateral tapping like this. So arms crossed over, bilateral tapping. And all of these things that you'll find things that really resonate and work for you. There's so many different breathwork techniques, and some will work better with some people or some crews, and other things might not quite resonate with you, but something else really works. So it's really exploring, okay, are there different techniques that I can try? Yeah. Yeah.